All right, let's hope we get the slides to work here. There we go. Well, good morning, everybody. It's my great pleasure to be able to speak here at this Bett Roadshow. I spoke at Bett last year and on the topic of global citizenship. And this year is something that's really very close to my heart, which is this whole issue of collaboration and the challenges that we face when you're trying to collaborate. If we think about what's happened here, and we think about where Malaysia is positioned, when I moved here 5.5 years ago, people were tripping off words such as dual degrees, joint degrees, articulations. These were a lot of international relationships which were going on here. But in a country which had got a lot of new institutions, what I quickly realized, and many people know this, of course, is that many of these were one way. They were not bilateral relationships. They were not trilateral. And the key thing with all this is if you're going to collaborate, you have to have ways of communicating. You have to be able to work together. Different people will bring different things to the party. Why is this international collaboration so important? Well, we've already heard and touched about this today. It's about the student experience, because this is what students and parents are demanding. One of the things I really noticed about Malaysia was just how many Malaysians have had the opportunity of international study compared to many other countries. That's a huge advantage to build on. Parents are also looking at those opportunities. They realize the globalized world that we're in. We look at that through employment outcomes. We've spoken about that already. And already there have been studies which are showing that students who have had some form of international study tend to get better employment outcomes, better jobs, etc. And last of all, of course, the dreaded word rankings for universities. A bit of self-interest in the whole thing as well, because this is very important to us. So after I arrived here 5 years ago, we were working with a new university with some very long-standing relationships. In fact, our oldest relationship goes back 30 years with the University of Toulouse in France and 15 years with the University of the West of England. We'd had many other partnerships and relationships, but some of them weren't very deep. And the question was, how do you deepen those? So we developed a strategic plan, and my heartfelt goal was I wanted every single student on our campus to have an international experience. Already at Taylor's, every student has to do an internship, and I said I want every student to be able to have an international experience. So when they walk across the stage to get their degree, our chancellor can ask them, so where did you go? What did you do? Not only that, I also wanted our staff to be engaged. But our mobility was tiny. So looking across at what we can do both internationally, both regionally within ASEAN, and that poses very big challenges, because how do you work with a country like Laos when you look at what the average student there is able to pay, just even for travel? So our kind of question was, how can we look at that and revision what it is that we were looking to do? When I arrived at Taylor's, I said, how many exchange partners have we got? They said, oh, good news. I said, great, how many? They said, we've got 17. I said, okay, well, we're only 2 years old as a university. It's not a bad start. Where are the 17? They said, well, 7 are in South Korea and 6 are in Finland. I said, great, so that leaves 4 for the rest of the world. Okay, got a bit of work to do here. Much as I love South Korea and Finland, we're a little bit overweight here. We now have 153 partners in 30 countries. We've signed an MOU on average every 2 weeks. I think the British government would like to do that at the moment. Anyway, so these are where we've been going and the push that we have had on doing these sorts of things. Now, what has that brought? It's about collaboration. It is about bringing people together. It is about finding a way that you can collaborate. And with different people, there will be different forms of relationships. And I think the advantage within Malaysia particularly is that Malaysian institutions have different strands to pull on. The challenge is, how can you turn that, what has been a one-way relationship, into bilateral? So we've got, as you can see, our goal has been, where will our students go? And we've taken, whether it's been links working with Erasmus, and our Erasmus Plus, we've just received another 130,000 euros for staff mobility in that case, built upon student mobility. And this would allow our students to go and study in Malaysia, in the UK, sorry, just as it will be to get students here. Because when I looked at our 10-year relationship with the University of the West of England, we've been sending students there for 10 years. We didn't have an MOU for student mobility. So the question was, how do we turn the corner? This was part of turning the corner. Here are 9 different students from the University of Birmingham. We send about 30 to 35 students a year to do a 2+2 program with the University of Birmingham. Our students do very well when they go to Birmingham. I went to meet with the Vice-Chancellor, Sir David Eastwood. Lovely man. So I said, wouldn't it be great if those students could come to Malaysia, your students could come to Malaysia? And he looked at me and he said, so, Perry, how old is Taylor's University? He was looking at his watch at the time, as I recall. So I said, okay, we haven't been around for very long, but let me tell you about how well our students do who come to you. Luckily, their Dean of Engineering was there, who pointed out that 78% of our students get firsts or 2-1s, which is better than the average University of Birmingham student. So I pointed out to him that if we could prepare those students pretty well, let's see how much we could do for their students. The Dean picked up on this, and he paid for all these students to come to Malaysia. They came on a seriousness, they came to have fun too. What did we get them to do? Because our key thing, and I said to them, was we have to be able to build a relationship on something that each party can bring. So these particular students were told they had to come up with an invention to go in a house. What we didn't tell these British students was they were going to build the house. They came to Malaysia, built a house in 3 days. Here's the house, working with the Malaysian students. We sent them out to build a house for an Orang Asli community. These students worked together on a MOOC before they'd even met each other. They raised £2,500 on a crowdfunding site. So when they went back to the UK and someone said, so what did you do this summer? They said, I went to Malaysia and built a house for an Orang Asli community. What did you do? I went down the pub, right? So what we found very quickly was that this meant and built and changed our relationship. So whether it's been working with our partners in different countries, so in Australia, oops, I'm losing my clicker here. In Australia, it was getting funding with a new Colombo plan. And so we had 2 students coming. These weren't the students, by the way. Fiona, who is here, came and spent 1 semester with us, paid for by the Australian government. She then went to work in a slum in India. Matt, who's here in the middle here, he's just left with us, but he's actually coming back to work for the Malaysian Australian Business Council. We have had students come up, and it's been involved in all those partnerships. This was a group who was here very recently. They came and spent 2 weeks in Malaysia looking at Malaysian cuisine. In fact, in the bottom left-hand, sorry, it's a bit blurry, Your Excellency, but they were here, and the High Commissioner gave a very interesting discussion on gastro diplomacy to these students to understand the challenges when you're working in a different multicultural environment. So it's been working together and building these links and partnerships. Now, Asia and ASEAN has proved particularly challenging. And part of our relationship there has been working with SHARE, which has actually been funded by the EU. So whilst we can go to great meetings like this, the reality is last semester we had 8 students from within ASEAN, from the Philippines, from Indonesia, from Laos, from Myanmar on our campus, who have had that funding. And we've been able to send our students there, and also those students get to go to European countries as well. So it has been finding ways to build those relationships on different strands. Working together here with the Philippines, so the students spent 2 weeks in each other's country, learning about each other's country. And this became a very important part, because at the end of the day, it's about people to people. When collaboration, doesn't matter whether it's between academics with other academics, with research groupings, it's about building personal relationships. But every university has something different to bring. Malaysia's got a lot of new universities, but we have a lot of enthusiasm, and we can do a lot of things in this country that other countries don't have that advantage. And it's also the fact that we're very well positioned here, and that's been helping us to build our links. So whether it's been our students in Japan, where they've been teaching English, or whether it's been through research networks, and this was a Newton grant, again working with our partners at the University of the West of England, who have brought together to look at research in terms of cities comparing Putrajaya, KL, and Bristol. So each of these different strands, because what we have found, in particular when you look at rankings for universities, you get papers published with people from other universities, that gives you extra points. 5% of QS rankings is on student mobility. So there are considerable pushes, and some countries have done very, very well with that. The challenge now is, going forward, is how we deepen those collaborations through every single thing we do. And I call this intensive internationalization. We can do the nice stuff. I can show you nice slides. But the question is how deep in different organizations this is going. And it's only through getting further depth. And it's between not only wanting to do something, but also giving. So we had our team working with some AusAid money down in Timor-Leste. It is through building these relationships at different lengths and at being able to do different things. Oops, sorry. Because at the end of the day, here are 3 students who came back from studying law. Each of them spoke very passionately about their experience and how it had changed them. They talked about how they'd laughed and about how they'd cried. But they had matured. They had seen the world through different eyes. And the challenge with collaboration is that it's only by walking in those shoes that you can get that experience. So it's by building not only regional and local links here through ASEAN, and I think we've got great opportunities to do that. My biggest challenge at the moment is persuading our Malaysians that actually going within ASEAN is interesting. Because they see, when they look internationally, they see they should get on an aeroplane for a very long time. I don't believe that is true, because I believe with what we can do here in this region, there are cultural differences and challenges within this region which are much greater. I'm more likely to bump into a Malaysian walking around Manchester or Melbourne than I probably am to do that in Chiang Mai or Manila. So the challenge, I think, for us, many of us here, is how we can build those links and to do those things here within the region. And for the students that we've had here, some French and German students here, those were great experiences. And the ones that they have gone back and the relationships that they have built. So at all levels, we've just had a couple of students from Dundee who've been here, who've just gone back working in our labs over the summertime. It has been the relationship at every single level, and it's through this intensive internationalization, through policies, through teaching, through learning, through the internationalization of the curriculum, through the delivery. And I believe the future of universities, as Graham has pointed out, is going to be through having those collaborations. Because no single university, doesn't matter how old you are, how great you are, can do it on its own anymore. And to make the point about the students from Birmingham, if you remembered them, we had them here for 3 weeks. Every week, the University of Birmingham sent a different lecturer. Now, by the 3rd week, I was feeling paranoid. I was like, another one? Another one? So I looked at them, I said, excuse me, should I be paranoid? Are you a bit worried about what we're going to do to your students? They said, no, it's fine. I said, well, if you don't mind me asking, why are you here? Every week a different person. They said, look, Perry, University of Birmingham, we're a top research university, no problem. But the British government is going to have this thing called TEF. And we're all researchers. And our challenge is we want to become and work out how other universities are doing good teaching. And your students seem to do very well when they come to Birmingham. So we want to come and find out what you do. Birmingham did get gold in the TEF, by the way, which is the teaching framework in the UK. But they could see that there was something that we could do and that we could build that collaboration based on different strengths. So I'll leave you with that thought. There's great links to be made, but it's by thinking through all the different collaborations that different universities can do. Not every university will have to be able to do the same thing. It's finding partnerships where there are different wins that will bring the result that I think all of us see is going to be so important in the future. Thanks very much.